is James Bridger. I'm a vice president of the NATO Association of Canada, a charitable NGO dedicated to informing Canadians about the value of security and the importance of NATO. Thoughts about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization do not usually occur to Canadians on a daily basis, but the peace, prosperity, and security that NATO provides are integral to our way of life. The principle that an attack against one is an attack on all is the foundation of NATO and maintains peace through strength, perhaps the greatest lesson from the death and destruction of the Second World War. This collective defense draws its strength through unity, and the correlation is, of course, that division is the main weakness. We gather at a pivotal moment in international relations, one where the security and stability of Europe is threatened by Russia's destructive invasion of Ukraine, which has necessitated expanded and strengthening of partnerships to confront this challenge. Today, we're here to explore a significant development in this landscape: Sweden's decision to join NATO as its newest member, which was ratified on March 7th of this year. For decades, Sweden has upheld a strong tradition of neutrality and non-alignment, contributing to peace and stability through diplomacy, cooperation, peacekeeping initiatives. However, as the global security environment continues to evolve, so must our strategies for safeguarding peace. Sweden's decision to join NATO is reflective of these changing dynamics, underscoring the importance of collective defense, shared values, and multipolar cooperation in today's interconnected world. Together, we will discuss the implications of this decision, from strengthening regional defense to promoting global security, and how Sweden's involvement will contribute to NATO's ongoing activity. We hope you'll join us and continue to engage with the NATO Association as part of our community via Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. I also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be part of future events as well. I'd now like to introduce a member of our NATO Association team, Christian Rudolfer, who will introduce our guest, Her Excellency the Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. As he said, my name is Christian Rudolfer. I'm an engagement coordinator here at the NAOC. I'll be the host for this discussion, along with my colleagues, Arjun and Marina.
Hi, I'm Marina Zaki. I'm a social media coordinator team lead at the NATO Association of Canada, and I'll be hosting this interview alongside my colleagues Christian and Arjun.
Hello, my name is Arjun, and I'm an engagement coordinator team lead, and I'll be hosting this alongside my colleagues Christian and Marina.
Your Excellency, thank you for joining us today. Doing a quick background on you. So you began your political career in the political department at Sweden's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I understand. But very quickly you rose up second secretary to Sweden's Embassy in the Czech Republic in just a couple of years. You became the first Secretary of Political Affairs at the Swedish Embassy in the United States. You've become the Director of Security Policy as far back as 2007. In the policy department, and you returned to your ambassadorial role, I understand, in 2010, and you've served all over the place, the UN, Moldova, Sudan, before coming to Canada in 2023. And I understand before starting career, you studied international relations and political science at Denison University and at Stockholm University as well. If you'd like to make a few opening comments, that would be fantastic. And before we move into the questions.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, it's great to be on this show. Very much look forward to discussing about Sweden's recently joining NATO as an ally. I've been serving here in Ottawa as the Swedish ambassador since September last year. So it's my first anniversary has just passed, and one of the highlights, of course, of this past year has been, this whole accession to NATO, which happened on 7th of March this year. Sweden also then participated for the first time as a full member of NATO at the Washington summit in July this summer. But I'm ready to take your questions and have an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about Sweden's membership in NATO and what our contributions to NATO will be.
Well, thank you very much. We can jump right in. Marina, I believe the first question is yours.
So to get us started, my first question is, how has Sweden's recent entry into NATO reshaped its defense and foreign policy strategies? And what are Sweden's primary objectives and expectations within the alliance?
Yes, as I mentioned, Sweden became a full member of NATO this year. Oh no, what happened? I'm sorry, can you still see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Oh, okay. I got something else up there. Okay, sorry about that. Yes. So Sweden joined NATO as a full member this year on 7th of March. And it's about 6 months then now. So we are still a fairly recent ally. But we are very much ready and eager to contribute to the overall defense and deterrence of the alliance. Now, joining NATO was a historical step for Sweden, and it entails a profound and an immediate change in Sweden's foreign and security policy. And as you may know, it was after more than 200 years of non-participation in a military alliance that Sweden decided to become part of the defense community of the Western democracies. It is a major step for Sweden, but it is also in some ways a very natural one. Sweden has for decades been a member of the Partnership for Peace program, and we have been an enhanced partner of NATO and participated in many NATO missions and exercises over the years. So there's already a very high degree of interoperability between Swedish forces and the forces of other allied members. So having said that, it was a very, profound change. There are some things that still will remain the same, though. We will continue to promote the fundamental values of Swedish foreign policy, such as standing up for international law, for human rights and gender equality and so forth. So the fundamental value base remains the same. And this is something we share, of course, also with members of NATO. Now, what made Sweden join NATO at this point has everything to do with the changing security environment in our neighborhood after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. And this was an irreversible turning point for Sweden and also for European and global security. So you can say that Sweden's membership in NATO is a direct result of Russia's illegal and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine. Because Russia's actions have severely worsened the security situation in Europe and our immediate neighborhood for a long time to come. And with Sweden and Finland's membership in NATO, NATO as a whole will become stronger. the developments in our own region will become more predictable, and we and our neighbors, immediate neighbors in the Baltic Sea region will also become more secure. Yeah, so and as a NATO member, Sweden will contribute to all NATO's core tasks, meaning defense and deterrence, conflict prevention and crisis management, and also cooperative security. So Sweden would like to be a very credible and reliable and engaged ally that contributes to the entire security of NATO, in accordance then also with the alliance's 360-degree perspective on security and defense. But for natural reasons, since we are located way up north in Europe, our immediate focus will then be our own neighborhood around the Baltic Sea.
I totally agree with you, Ambassador, and I definitely agree that with Sweden's membership into the alliance will grow stronger than ever. And with that said, Sweden continues to integrate into the alliance. What do you think are its current defense needs, and how do you anticipate these evolving in the future?
Yeah. So Sweden will, as a NATO ally, also focus on strengthening its own national defense in accordance with Article 3 of the NATO treaty. Sweden already has quite a lot of military capabilities and is a net contributor of security in our part of the world. At this point, Sweden has not yet received the defense requirements from NATO. They will come early next year. However, we are, as mentioned, ready to contribute in many ways to the collective defense of the entire alliance. And over time, we will then participate extensively in NATO's activities, in operations, and also interventions within the framework of NATO's measures for deterrence and defense of the entire alliance, according to this 360 perspective. But there are many, many ways that we can contribute. One way is, of course, just with our geography, where we are placed in the north of Europe. So that means Sweden has a very geostrategic position, which is also vital for enabling reinforcements to reach Europe from North America. Sweden has also capability of supporting other allies, which is essential then for the allies' ability to operate in the northern part of Europe. So Sweden, the Swedish armed forces will also be a major asset to NATO because they can contribute with regional expertise and military resources that are suited then also to the Nordic conditions. So, for example, Sweden has a unique capability of operating with Navy forces in the demanding and unique environment of the Baltic Sea region. And specifically, and I'm sure we'll get back to that later, Sweden is also preparing contributions to support NATO's air policing missions. And also we are preparing to contribute troops to NATO's enhanced forward presence, these land forces in Latvia. these are the forces, the NATO forces that are Canadian-led. So this is something that is currently being prepared. So there are many different ways that Sweden can contribute to enhance NATO's defense and deterrence capabilities, and specifically then in our region of Europe.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You've actually answered the question I was about to ask. But if you would like, I mean, are there more examples of Sweden's participation in NATO exercises and operations since becoming a full member?
Well, I mean, let me just, go back a little bit in time, because the questions about participating in NATO exercises operations, I mean, Sweden has a long tradition of participating in NATO operations and exercises. And the aim of this has been to improve, Sweden's ability to actually handle different crisis situations together with NATO. And also to enhance our own capabilities. Sweden has participated in NATO-led operations in Bosnia and in Kosovo and in Afghanistan and Libya and Iraq. And this way, Swedish military forces have also adapted to military standards. So by participating in a lot of NATO missions, and then as an enhanced partner to NATO, there is already, as I mentioned before, a high degree of interoperability between Swedish and other allied forces. So Sweden has also hosted NATO-led training and exercises in the very north of Sweden many times. And we also cooperate with NATO standardization and capability development. So we have this long tradition of being a part of different NATO missions and training and exercises. So being now a full member will not change much in that regard. We will just continue to participate in these missions and training exercises, and also provide space for that in Sweden. And most specifically, as I already mentioned, the way we will contribute as a full member is to participate in the air policing in the Baltic Sea region, and a reduced battalion of about 600 soldiers are now being trained and prepared to be deployed with the forward land forces of NATO, which are Canadian-led, in Latvia, and this will happen sometime early next year. So these are the most concrete examples of how we will contribute to the alliance's collective security measures.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So if we can now talk about the defense spending. So Sweden has committed to increasing its defense spending to 2% of GDP by 2026, in line with NATO's defense spending guidelines. So given that Sweden's current defense budget is approximately 1.5% of GDP, how do you foresee the impact of an increased spending on Sweden's defense capabilities, and which branches are likely to benefit more from such an increase?
Well, as a matter of fact, Sweden is spending more than 2% of its GDP on defense. So we will reach about 2.1% of GDP this year, according to the NATO definition of spending. And this, from our side, will also be considered a minimum level. So in the long term, Sweden's total defense expenditures are estimated to be slightly over 2%, for a longer time. So we have already reached the target, and we really believe that it is important to have a fair burden sharing in NATO. And also we believe that we Europeans should take a greater responsibility also for transatlantic security and creating a stronger European pillar, so to speak, in NATO. So I mean, we are doing our part already, and have already reached this target, and it will also be sustained over time. So the Swedish military spending has also been increased over the last few years, quite a lot, and this way we have then also managed to come above the 2%. So this way we also are contributing our share to the collective security of NATO.
That's really great to hear, Ambassador. So I would say that now bilateral defense trade between Canada and Sweden has grown over the years. So could you discuss how this trade relationship might evolve in the future?
Yes, I mean, Sweden and Canada has a very strong and close relationship in many areas and sectors, and that also includes the defense sector, and some Swedish defense. I mean, the Swedish major defense industry is also well represented and connected here to their Canadian partners, and have already provided many excellent products to meet Canada's needs in the defense sector. And we also know that, you know, with the updated defense policy, a number of new investments that are needed to upgrade and modernize the Canadian defense has also been identified. So anyway, we have a rather advanced defense industry that can offer world-class technologies in the air and on the ground and at the sea. It is an important asset, of course, for Sweden and our own security, but this is also something we can then, our capabilities, so to speak, something we can share with the alliance as a whole. And now that Sweden is an ally, we see that there will be more opportunities coming to strengthen the links between Canada and Sweden, both when it comes to military relations. We already see that the number of delegations going in, either directions have been increasing over the last few years. But there is also, we hope, more opportunities, a greater potential than for different partnerships also when it comes to the defense industry. So yes, I mean, the contacts have already been established. Our defense industries are represented here, but we see that with our membership in NATO, there could be further and potential opportunities to enhance our partnerships also in the defense sector.
Yeah, Excellency. So can we talk about a specific example of the bilateral, especially in trade between the two countries, Canada and Sweden? So Canada is expected to invest approximately $60 billion in submarine procurement program over the next few decades. Sweden's expertise in submarine technology, particularly with the A-26 class submarine. How do you envision Sweden's role as a potential partner to Canada, and what are the projected benefits for both nations if such a partnership materializes?
Yeah, again, I really would want to emphasize, the very good and strong and broad, relationship that already exists between Sweden and Canada. So here, I think again one needs to look a bit on the broader context. Also, we are two nations that are very like-minded and have many shared interests and values. Now, in the updated defense policy of Canada, our North Strong and Free, it said that asserting Canada's sovereignty in the Arctic and the Nordic regions is the most urgent and important task that Canadians face. Now, like Canada, Sweden is also an Arctic state. So we have similar strategic interests when it comes to the high north and the Arctic region. So, again, looking more on the kind of broader situation, we think that what Sweden again can contribute. We have our geography, but we also have our military capabilities that significantly can strengthen the alliance's ability to carry out operations in Northern Europe and the High North. And we also have defense capabilities then that are adjusted to the harsh climate of the North. So, that's more the kind of the broader context. We also are two nations that, have similar economies. We do a lot of trade in the forestry and the mining sectors. We are also two countries that are very much focused on the green transition, that we want to introduce new and green technologies in our different industrial sectors. Now, as for the Canadian submarine procurement program, we of course see this as a great opportunity to further strengthen our already excellent defense collaboration. And as you mentioned, the Swedish submarine, the A-26 class submarine, this one is a well recognized submarine as a world-class conventional submarine. So, well, at the moment, we think it's great that Canada now is finally moving ahead with a procurement for the submarines, and we're just waiting to get more information about the procurement process that will be unfolding here in the next few months.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Just sort of a follow-up question. What unique qualities can Sweden bring over and above the potential partners of Germany or South Korea or other partners in the submarine procurement process?
Well, I think I kind of partly at least answered that in response to the previous question. I think that, again, what we can bring is that, we are two countries that have a very strong and long-lasting relationship as two northern and even Arctic states, and that we share very many interests when it comes to the protection and the defense and deterrence in the high north and in the Arctic region. So I would say that commonality between our two countries would I think also be an important aspect to consider here. But yeah, this is, I think, what would be our kind of comparative advantage or benefit that we are very familiar about. You know, the conditions up in the high north, in the Arctic, and we have the technology that is also adjusted to operate in these regions.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It would be interesting if we can hear from you a bit about the American upcoming elections, presidential elections. So we know that the United States contributes approximately 2/3 of NATO's overall defense spending, making its policies crucial to the alliance. So in light of the upcoming presidential elections in the United States, what scenarios does Sweden anticipate could affect NATO's alliance and unity and strategic direction, and how is Sweden preparing to navigate a potential shift in the U.S. foreign policy?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're all watching very closely to see what will happen later this fall in the U.S. election. But this is what I would like to say in response to this question, that the United States is an indispensable partner for Sweden and Europe, and it is crucial both for our security and our prosperity. And regardless of the election outcome, the US will continue to be an indispensable partner to Sweden and Europe. And relations between the US and Europe to Sweden will develop as they do after every election in both the US and Europe. So this is part of the democratic process, but we are absolutely convinced that our deep and close relations will remain long-term. So, I mean, the Swedish government is working continuously to maintain the strong and close relationship that we have with the US. And several, you know, agreements have been reached with the US now, as also Sweden recently joining NATO. We have the Defense Cooperation Agreement and so forth. But we, you know, look forward to cooperating with the upcoming US administration, regardless of the election results. I mean, that is just how we approach it. And I think many other countries, including, you know, Canada, also approach it. I mean, obviously, we will have to engage and you know, build good relations with any US administration, given the very key role that US plays also when it comes to NATO's overall defense capabilities.
That's very insightful. Thank you, Your Excellency. Now that we talked about the United States, we're gonna ask a question about Russia and China. So NATO's 2022 strategic concept emphasized the need to address the growing security challenges posed by Russia and China. How does Sweden plan to align its national defense strategy with this broader NATO vision? And are there specific areas within the strategic concept where Sweden aims to make a significant impact?
Yeah, I mean, Sweden as a recent, you know, new ally of NATO. Yes, I mean, we fully subscribe, of course, to the strategic concept of NATO. Now, the basic premise of Sweden's security policy is the assessment that Russia will constitute a serious threat to the security of Sweden and Europe for the foreseeable future. And this is also what the Washington summit also states, that Russia remains the most significant and direct threat to the security of the allies. Now, so Sweden will, you know, work consistently for a very clear-sighted and realistic and long-term Russia policy that constrains Russia's possibilities for aggression, destabilization, and power expansion in Europe. Now, this we will do both on the national level. I mean, we constantly develop our own policies, but we will also do this in the NATO context. So that I think, on the policy level, we see that. I mean, we have long experience, again, where we are located to, have to relate to Russia. So we think we have also, a lot to contribute to the discussions that will be taken forward in the NATO format on how to update the Russia policy of NATO. Now, another way, of course, of contributing to NATO's deterrence and defense is to focus on this constraining Russia's scope for action, and that is also combined with continuous support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So, I mean, yes, I mean, from our perspective, we believe that it is important that NATO also has an updated, clear-sighted, and also long-term policy when it comes to, limiting, constraining Russia's possibilities, like I said, for power expansion in Europe. So we mostly focused on Russia, but of course we share the concern of allies also when it comes to China's role and also enabling Russia in their ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine.
I totally agree with you, Ambassador, and you already answered the question that I was going to ask about, what Sweden's opinion is on NATO's long-term strategy in supporting Ukraine, particularly in maintaining alliance cohesion. But on the other hand, NATO countries have pledged over 43 billion in military aid to Ukraine since the onset of the conflict with Russia. So how is, if briefly could just speak about how Sweden has contributed to these efforts both before and after joining NATO?
For Sweden, the main foreign policy priority is to continue strong and long-term support for Ukraine, because this is not only about defending the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, but as you know, I mean, the Russia war of aggression is also an effort to undermine the whole European security architecture. And so for Sweden, again, I mean, we think that it is absolutely important, essential to continue to provide a very strong and long-term support for Ukraine, because they are not only fighting their own fight, they are also fighting to defend the rest of Europe. So Sweden will continue to provide political, humanitarian, military, and financial to Ukraine for as long as it takes. So I think this is a position very similar to the Canadian government, but this is our line. And when it comes to actual numbers, I just got the most recent numbers here. Yeah, I mean, we have to date, since the outbreak of the war in February 22, we have provided support of these, different kinds, amounted to 52 million Swedish krona, which translates to about 6.5 billion Canadian dollars. So if you then also relate that to the size of our country, I think we are one of the main contributors here in supporting Ukraine. I mean, it is our position that strong and predictable and also long-term support to Ukraine. I mean, it is not only morally right, but it is also our primary means to influence Russia's action. And it is clear that Russia will not cease its aggression on its own accord. So I mean, we have to look at ways how we can constrain Russia, but part of that is also to continue to provide support to Ukraine. Now, the Swedish government has also pushed for strong and long-term support through the EU. As you know, we're also a member of EU since 1995. So, and recently a historic agreement was reached on financial support to Ukraine from the EU, totaling 50 billion euros. This sends also a very, very clear signal to Ukraine and other international partners that Europe stands united in its support to Ukraine. So Sweden will remain unwavering in its support to Ukraine. So I mean, we're very, very firmly committed on that issue, and our support will continue for as long as it is necessary.
So sort of on that same vein of support for countries outside of NATO, there's been a lot of discourse on potential further expansion of the alliance to countries like Georgia and Ukraine, possibly. What is Sweden's stance on that kind of on NATO's open door policy in that regard?
Yeah, Sweden has a very strong interest in supporting NATO's open door policy, and this is also based on this very fundamental principle that each country should have the right to choose its own security policy, platform or path. So Sweden therefore also supports Ukraine's aspiration to become a NATO member, and stands behind the decisions that NATO have made previously on this matter, both in Bucharest in 2008 and in Vilnius in 2023. Yes, we believe that it is important also to continue to support Ukraine, then to prepare them for a path towards membership in NATO. In the support that we are providing, there is also then ways that one can support Ukraine on fulfilling conditions in order to become a membership eventually. This is definitely our position, and also, similarly, when it comes to Georgia, since you asked about that, we have, as a new NATO member, we have acceded to all the NATO pledges made in the past. So that also includes the 2008 decision in Bucharest that Georgia also will become a NATO member, provided then that the requirements are met. So so that is our position. A very strong support for the open door policy, because we believe that it is up to each country to decide on its own own security policy choice. That should not be up to any other countries to decide. And as long as you can fulfill the requirements, then the door should, it should remain open, and then the membership can become a possibility if you then meet the conditions.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a little topic jump here. Going back to Arctic security challenges, how high does the Swedish government prioritize those challenges from Russia and China? And what are some near-term policies and strategies to kind of manage these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, now we have a situation that after Sweden and Finland's accession to NATO, all countries around the Baltic Sea, except for Russia, of course, are members of the alliance. It also means that all Arctic states, except Russia, are members of the alliance. So, you can say that this fundamentally redraws the security map of Europe. And it has also, of course, certain implications. Now, we believe that Sweden's geography and military assets can significantly strengthen then the alliance ability to carry out operations in Northern Europe and the High North. Discussed a little about that before. And we will, from our side, work with all the allies to make the best possible use of these assets in order then to strengthen NATO's deterrence and defense. And here again, I mean, this opens up a lot of opportunities for Sweden and Canada to share experiences and expertise and cooperate on matters pertaining to defense and security in the Arctic region. So I believe that, the fact that, again, all the Arctic states except Russia are part of the alliance, this could also mean that there will be more a pivot or, focus again on the northern flank in NATO, in terms of planning and operational capabilities and so forth. So, and we are ready to make our contributions to that.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So we rather talked about conventional security challenges or threats. How about cyber threats or hybrid warfare? How does Sweden plan to contribute to addressing such future security challenges within NATO?
Yeah, I mean, these are threats. I mean, the cyber threats and hybrid warfare. I mean, we see more and more instances of this. So I think both as a when it comes to national capabilities, but also then as an alliance, we really need to look at how we can enhance our capabilities to defend ourselves to these kinds of threats. And I just note that when it comes to cyber defense issues, this was also described in the strategic concept of NATO, and that this cyberspace is getting more and more contested at all times, and malign actors are using this method to undermine the interest of allies. Now, I mean, from a Swedish perspective, we of course have an overall interest that NATO's capabilities when it comes to cyber issues will continue to develop. And here NATO can also play a role when it comes to supporting the development of cyber defense capabilities of Ukraine. We think that is something NATO can do. I mean, we are committed to developing our own national cyber defense capability in line with NATO's cyber defense strategy. Another aspect I wanted to highlight here is also what the EU is doing. Because the EU is also looking at, enhancing its capabilities when it comes to defending against the cyber attacks. So therefore, we think that it's also important with EU-NATO coordination on this issue, so that, to really use all capabilities that are available now. And the same goes for hybrid. I mean, we see so many examples on hybrid operations in different allied countries, and it's important, of course, to continue to build resilience against that. I think it was in the Vilnius summit that a range of concrete measures were identified that allied members could take on a voluntary basis to enhance their capabilities on this matter. Sweden, as an ally, intends to actively contribute to develop NATO's policies and capabilities when it comes to countering hybrid also challenges. So, and also in this field, again, both when it comes to cyber threats and hybrid warfare, we think that it is important that there is a good coordination with the EU, because the EU also is developing various policies and capabilities in this field, and both EU and NATO members, which of course overlap to a great degree, but we would all benefit from having good coordination and a high degree of complementarity between EU and NATO on these issues. But we will definitely do our part from the Swedish side to strengthen our capabilities when it comes to both cyber threats and hybrid warfare.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was great to hear. I just wanted to acknowledge to the audience who are watching this is that we won't be able to get to all the questions, but we'll try our best to cover one question at least. And Ambassador, we just have one last question to end the session off, and it would be, how does Sweden explain joining NATO in relation to their historic strategy of non-alignment and neutrality?
I mean, if you mean explaining it to the Swedish public or for, in general. Now, I think that, I mean, what you can say about the pivot here, I mean, because we have been non-participating in a military alliance for over 200 years. So it is a major break, so to speak, with our historic, strategy. But it is, as I also mentioned before, a direct response to the developments in our neighborhood. I mean, meaning the Russia war of aggression against Ukraine. In such a situation, obviously, the Swedish government has to look at how best to enhance our own security situation, and here we also went very much hand in hand with Finland. So there were also a lot of dialogue between Sweden and Finland at this juncture, because we all were very much affected in Europe by this again illegal and unprovoked action by Russia. So in terms of the support in Sweden, I mean, very, very quickly there was a broad support in the Swedish parliament. So, I mean, across the aisle, so to speak. So all the major parties, both on the left and on the right, you know, they came together. So in the Swedish parliament, 6 of the 8 parties are fully behind Sweden joining NATO, and they have also really the qualified majority of the seats in the parliament. But also with the Swedish public, you can see that there's very quickly there was a very strong support among the Swedish public for this decision to join NATO. So, I mean, it has also remained there after I mean, we made the decision already in May 22, and then you know, the whole process then took us to full membership in March this year. But in the meantime, I mean, the support has remained very high. So, I mean, 70-80%. So there is no, I mean, it's a broad consensus in the Swedish parliament, and also big support among the Swedish public for this break with, you know, our previous, you know, tradition of not being part of an alliance. But this has everything to do with the changing security environment in our part of Europe, and this is something which is very real. I mean, here in Canada, obviously there is a distance, you know, what's happening on the European continent and in Ukraine, but I mean, we sense it much more strongly. And of course, also there are a lot of Ukrainian refugees and so forth who have sought protection in different European countries, and in Canada too, of course. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if that answers your question. I think in relation to other allies, I mean, we have been welcomed by, you know, with open arms by you know, everyone, and Canada was also the very first country to ratify our membership application. So I think because Sweden had been an enhanced partner for such a long time and contributed to so many NATO missions and participated in exercises for decades. So, I mean, it was not a big step in that sense, because we were already very much integrated and a high degree of interoperability and so forth. So, but more on the political side, yes. I mean, it went very quickly, you know, that whole decision process, but with a strong support from the parliament and also from the Swedish public.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador. I believe we'll have to move to concluding remarks now. Robert, did you have something you wanted to say on the subject?
I thought I'd conclude, Christian. And thank you and Marina and Arjun for such a terrific job moderating this discussion. Ambassador, what a perfect question to end on. I think, you know, the NATO Association of Canada, our job is to try to make sure Canadians understand why NATO is so important. So it's such a valuable thing for us to be able to speak with you today and to hear just what it is that pushed Sweden to join NATO, and to, you know, perhaps have Canadians reassess what they take for granted. The kind of world that we look out upon today is vastly changed. We all know that. But the more that we can realize that the kind of unity and strength that NATO offers, the ability to hold that kind of resilience for all of us to support our friends and the ideals that we've always supported in our hearts, but to do it in the real, in the round, as it were, across the globe through NATO and through putting our money where our mouth is, frankly. So Sweden gives us great inspiration and, of course, makes us feel that we're among the best people, which is always a nice thing as well. So, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who are watching, thank you, and please consider following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram, and then also please subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We've got many events that are always coming across Canada and online, and we hope that you'll join the surging group of Canadians who are appreciating security more and trying to make sure that we are more participatory and more loud, I suppose, in our support for Canada's contribution to global security. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you again, Christian, Marina, and Arjun, for such a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Always just hanging here at the end. If you can just
All
take
right.
us off live, there we go.